Hi, I'm Randy. I'm the creator of this board game, Radiant, and I'd like to take a minute to share with you how it's played, maybe in a casual way like I would if you were over for a game night at my house. I've got the board set up here for a two-player game. I've got two 10-card hands dealt out. That's how we start it. You'll acquire some more cards as the game goes on, but start with 10 cards each. Now these would normally be up in your hand. I've got them laid out here so that you can see them easily. And we've got the board on the table, marked with a battle tracker here in the center of the board, and we've got a couple score markers off in the corner. Each of the four temples on the board has a silver 3-point coin on it to start the game. And then on the right side of the board here we have a 9-card drafting pool that we've laid out. And we've set the deck up here at the top of the drafting pool so that we can replenish it as needed. So this is the world of Param. It's broken up into 4 realms, and there are 4 races in this world that correspond with each of those 4 realms. So we've got the Avis that live in the clouds, and the Stone Dwellers that live in the mountains, the Mariners live in the sea, and the Tree Folk live in the forest. And you're a general of an army, and you're warring over this world, trying to accumulate prestige and power, and you'll win or lose based on points in this game that we'll be tracking around the outside of the board. The game takes place over the course of 3 ages, and each of those ages is basically a hand of cards and one run across the map controlling the different regions. And each of those ages then, each of the 3 ages is broken up into a few different phases. In the first phase, we draft cards from the drafting pool into our hands so that we have some control over the makeup of our army. In the second phase, we play sets of cards down in front of us and score points based on what sets we get. Then we pick those sets back up into our hand, and then the final phase and the biggest phase of the game is the war itself, which is where we move around this map and we have trick-taking battles, and the winner of each battle controls a region, and we try to accumulate points in that manner. So let's go over the 3 phases of each age in detail. So the first phase of each age is the drafting phase, where players take turns choosing a card from this drafting pool and putting it in their hand and replacing it with a card from the deck. And they'll do this until they've each drafted a total of 4 additional cards into their hand. So in this 2-player game we started with a 10-card hand, and we'll draft until we have a total of a 14-card hand. In order to understand the kinds of choices that a player is making when they're selecting their cards in the draft, we need to look at the makeup of the deck a little bit. As I mentioned previously, the deck is broken up into these 4 races, these 4 different suits, and each suit has 6 different units. There's 2 copies of each unit, but the units are represented with this symbol listed here on this right player aid. The most powerful unit is the Phalanx, then we have the Knight, Mount, Scout, Elder, and the weakest unit by itself is the Assassin. Now, the Assassin is a special case, that's why it's not represented by a shield here. In the case of an assassination, the Assassin can actually jump up out of the power order here. Notice that the remaining units are all variations of a shield that becomes more complex as we work our way up the chart, so it's easy to learn the iconography. The Mounted Knight is a play that you can make that includes a knight and a mount, both from the same race, played together in combination. When done in that way, they're actually more powerful than a phalanx. So those are the units. Let's look at this left player aid here, and we'll see the kinds of sets that you can make during the meld phase, which happens immediately following the drafting phase. A Council of Elders is 1 elder from each race. An army is everything except the assassin, all from a single race. The Assassin's Guild is 1 assassin from each race, and then the Mounted Knight, in addition to being powerful during the war, is also worth meld points. So now that our 2 players here have finished their draft, they will clear the drafting pool. The remainder of these cards will not be used again in this age, but they'll be used again in the 2nd and 3rd ages. So we'll set them aside with the rest of the deck. So now our players meld sets of cards. Our red player here has acquired 2 Mounted Knights, an Avis and Treefolk Mounted Knight, and each of those will be worth 1 point here in the first age. Our yellow player has also acquired a Mounted Knight of the Stone Dweller race, and they've acquired a Council of Elders. The Council of Elders is worth 4 points here in the first stage. So the players will update their scoring track accordingly. They also leave their melds face up on the table for just a moment so that all players at the table have a chance to see what they melded. It gives everybody a little bit of information about what's in your hand, which can be useful later on during the war. At that point, you pick the cards back up into your hand, and we move on to the war itself. Now, the right to begin the war is far too important in this game to leave up to chance, so that right goes to the player who has the most scouts in their hand. In this game, our yellow player has 2 scouts in hand, and our red player has 1 scout unit, so the yellow player will be able to begin the war. They'll do that by moving the battle tracker into one of these 4 center regions, and then playing a card out of their hand, and the red player will play a card, and then the winning card will determine who controls that region. So here are the rules that govern what cards can be played. Let's say that the yellow player is moving here into the sea. At this point, the yellow player must play a sea card if they have one. They have to play a unit that is native to the region that they're in. There's an exception to that, however. The race that is radiant, in this age it's the Stone Dweller race, the race that is radiant can be played anywhere on the board. Now, they're not all powerful, they're more like a wild suit that is versatile and can be used anywhere. So our yellow player does have some Mariner blue cards, and so their choice is to either play a Mariner or to play one of these purple Stone Dweller cards. Now, if they didn't have any Mariners, they would be allowed to play a card from any other race. However, only the native race, Mariners, and the Radiant race, Stone Dwellers, would really be competing for the win. Now our yellow player isn't actually going to move into the sea. They're going to choose to move down into the clouds here, so they need to play an Avis race, or they could play a Radiant Stone Dweller. But yellow's going to come out with their Phalanx, because they want to keep control of this battle. Now, what the yellow player's forgotten here is that the red player melded a Mounted Knight and could win this battle if they want to. Or the red player might be choosing to hang on to this Mounted Knight, their Mounted Knight, until the battle gets down into one of the temples that would be worth more points. But red's not feeling patient today, so red's going to play out their Mounted Knight, and they place captured cards in front of them face down. Now that they've won the battle, they'll place it in front of them face down, and they'll mark the region with a cube of their color, and now they're going to have the right to choose where the next battle takes place by moving into an adjacent region. Cannot move diagonal. Now red's going to move here into this portal, and it's the first time that we've seen a portal, so let's talk about how portals work. There are 2 sets of portals, 2 pairs of portals, that connect diagonally across the board. So if you win a battle here in this portal, then in addition to being able to move to adjacent spaces away from this space, this portal diagonally across the board is also adjacent. So that's the first way that portals are different from normal spaces. The second way that portals are different is that they are two terrain types. So this portal is both forest and clouds for all purposes of battle resolution. That means you could successfully play a Tree Folk here, or an Avis here, or, as usual, you can always play the Radiant race. So in this particular space, there are 3 valid races that can compete. Now there's 2 ways in this first stage that you can score points during the war. One is that at the end of the age you're going to be scoring majorities by having more cubes than your opponent in a realm. And so red's already got a majority here, and will be able to score 5 points for that. The other way is to win a battle on a temple space that has one of these 3-point silver coins. Now, the red player doesn't think that they can win in here. They don't have a really strong hand in their Avis, but they do have a strong hand in Tree Folk that can fight over in the forest. So they're going to use this portal to escape away into the forests. So they'll play one of their higher Tree Folk cards here, the Phalanx. And then the yellow player gets to respond now and decide how much they really want it. Yellow's not very strong in Tree Folk. They've got a knight, as their highest card, which is not going to be able to beat that Phalanx. But they do have that Mounted Knight that we saw during the Meld phase in the Radiant Stone Dweller race that we could pull out right now. So they've got to decide if this battle's really worth it to them. And I think they want to hang on to that and maybe try to use it at a temple later on. So they'll go ahead and lose this one. They have a couple choices. Remember, they can play Tree Folk or they can play Avis, since this is both Clouds and Forest. But their lowest card in either of those races is a Tree Folk Elder. So the red player is going to mark that region with a red cube, jump across to the portal in the opposing realm, and take those cards and place them face down in front of them in their captured pile. Now Red's goal here is to both get a majority in the forest and also to capture that 3-point coin on the temple. So they've got a Mounted Knight and they've got a Phalanx they could use, they've got an Assassin. They're going to save their Mounted Knight for the temple itself and try to see if a Phalanx is going to be good enough here. Now our yellow player does not have any Tree Folk card again that can beat that Phalanx, but they feel that the battle is getting out of hand here, getting away from them. So they're going to use this opportunity to pull out their Radiant Mounted Knight, which is the highest play in the game, and they're going to win that battle, control it with a yellow cube, and get to decide where to go next. So the yellow player captures these cards, and they actually want that temple too, and they think they can get it in kind of a sneaky way. They're going to use an Assassin. Now we haven't seen an Assassin yet. They're going to be using a Radiant Assassin. You can use a Radiant, remember, anywhere on the board. But you can only target a unit that lives where you are. So the Assassin targets a specific unit out of your opponent's hand. And you name the unit, and if your opponent has that unit, they must play it, and that unit is defeated. In this case, our red player remembers that, our yellow player remembers that our red player melded a Mounted Knight and Tree Folk at the beginning of the age. And so they're going to send out their Assassin to assassinate Red's Tree Folk Knight. And so at this point, Red has to play the Knight. And in terms of power order, remember I said that the Assassin jumps out of power order. For the purposes of this battle now, the Assassin is equal in value to the Knight that it just eliminated. Now the red player does have a chance to respond to the assassination though. They're not required to play a second card, but if they choose, the red player could play an additional card into this battle, which is kind of an expensive choice. Now looking at Red's hand, the only thing they could do that would actually make any difference would be to play their Radiant Phalanx that they've still got, which would end up winning this battle even though they've lost the Knight that was part of their Mounted Knight. Since they're in a temple, and this is worth 3 points, they're going to go ahead and do that, play their Phalanx, so they've lost their Knight, but they do end up winning the battle since the Phalanx beats the Knight leveled Assassin. They mark that with a red cube, and they get to take that 3-point coin into their hand, and they'll score that 3-point coin at the end of the age. I think we've covered all of the different rules that might crop up during the course of a war. So let's go ahead and fast forward to what this board might look like at the end of the age. So for end of age scoring, remember the end of the age comes when both players have exhausted their hands of cards. At the end of the age, we'll count up our majorities. This is a yellow majority in the sea. We've got a yellow majority 2-1 in the forest, red majority in the clouds, and red majority in the mountains. So each player is going to be earning 5 points per majority, so 10 points each for majorities. And then our red player has collected 6 points in coins, and our yellow player has collected 3 points in coins, and they'll turn those in now and score them. At this point, we're ready to clear the board and prepare for the second age. Our cubes are removed. Leave our score markers on, of course. And we're going to pull out fresh coins onto the board. Now, any coins that were not removed during the first stage actually remain on the board. So the Cloud Temple in our second age is going to actually have 6 points on it. And our other temples will each get a 3-point coin. And in the second and third ages, we also are going to put a single 1-point copper coin on all of these non-portal, non-temple regions. So there's going to be some more points on the board. Additionally, we'll be using the second column of meld values, which is a little bit increased, so there's going to be some more points available. The radiant marker will rotate clockwise around the board, and we'll deal out a new hand and a new drafting pool. At this point, we follow the same phases that we did in the first stage. We'll draft, we'll meld sets of cards, and then we'll continue on with the war through the second age. In the third age, coins come out again, and the third age has an additional difference. At the end of the third age, any cards that are in your captured pile that have a picture of a coin on them are worth an additional point. And that's it. That's Radiant. It's a lot of fun to play. If you have any questions about specific rules, you can check out the rule book, or I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have in the comments. Thanks.